And I guess this is what I wanted to explore today, but the question to be asked is why women? Apart from the fact that this month is Women's Month, and March 8th is, of course, International Women's Day. Well, it's because women are disproportionately affected in the world. Here is some data from the United Nations. In politics, it's only a very small part of women actually are in leadership positions. A lot of women face still sexual violence. They are not able to reach their potential. We earn less, so much less. We don't really, in senior management, we are, in many countries, we are better educated than men, but we don't really get the jobs, the top jobs. So, but more importantly, there are things that you are not able to reach just because of you're a woman. And so in respect to that, I thought we could try to connect this to today's talk. So a little bit more about me. As I said, I've been working with the United Nations, but I'm also a researcher. I like talking to different people, sharing about what I know, but more importantly, also getting information from the people that I meet. And that is why I think your professor is somebody incredible, because I learn so much from her every time we talk. But also, I deal with a lot of people every day. In the Association for Christian Universities and Colleges in Asia, I handle 9 countries and about 50 plus universities from Japan, Taiwan, Thailand, Myanmar, I forgot the other countries, but there are 9 of them. Of course, the Philippines as well. And they have different, different cultures, different ways of doing things, but still trying to find the interconnections and the nodes that will connect and rather than divide. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Belt and Road Initiative. So the Belt and Road Initiative, with a belt, this is basically the Silk Road, the economic belt. So this is like overland Silk Roads. And the road is the 21st century maritime Silk Road. I'll talk a little bit about that and how that connects to the past, when it comes to the Silk Road of the past. So this is a very ambitious effort. This is, of course, proposed by China. And this tries to improve regional cooperation and connectivity on a transcontinental scale. And if you see the map, it's really like, it's a huge project. It's a huge project. It's not just one country doing it. It's really like, the idea is really on inclusive growth. This is like the catchphrase that is always being used, inclusive growth across the regions. So the initiative aims to strengthen infrastructure, trade, investment links between China and some 65 other countries, and it's still growing. And it accounts for over 30% of the global GDP, 62% of the population, and 75% of known energy reserves. So this is actually the Silk Road of the past. Okay, so the Silk Road of the past, if you remember your history, especially Asian history, this is the ancient routes of trade and cultural exchanges between China and other countries in the Eurasian continent and even northern and eastern Africa. So the land Silk Roads, they were flourishing from the Han to Tang dynasty and fading after Tang. And the maritime Silk Roads were in their prosperous period from Yuan to Song dynasty. I'm not going to talk about the dynasties anymore because we don't have time. But the term Silk Road, it was first used by the German geographer von Richthofen in 1877. Overland trade and communications routes along which trade flourished from the time of the Han dynasty. And then it was developed by a French sinologist or a Chinese expert, E. Chavannes, to cover maritime routes of trade in history. So this one that you see is the old Silk Road. But what is being proposed is the new one. And so far, they've actually done a lot of things. If you look at that, the Huawei Logistics Center in Hungary has been completed. The Rudbar Lorenstan Hydropower Dam in Iran has been completed. In Kazakhstan, in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Sumsel, and New Yalu Bridge. And there are a lot of things that are under construction and then under negotiation. So there's a lot of things happening all over the world under the banner of the Belt and Road Initiative. And one of the things, one of the promises of the Belt and Road Initiative is that it provides progress to areas which are still trying to develop. And one of the examples is Gwadar, which is in Pakistan. So this is a port city of the southwestern coast of Balochistan, Pakistan. And the city is located on the shores of the Arabian Sea, which is opposite to Oman. So this was under overseas possession until 1958. So for most of its history, Gwadar was a small settlement. And usually the economy is based on fishing, of course, because it's near the sea. So the strategic value was first recognized in 1954 by the United States. And right now there is this great potential for a major deep water port, which the Pakistani government actually tried to explore in 2001. So now, but still it was underutilized for a variety of reasons. But finally in 2015, Pakistan and China announced their intention to develop a China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or the CPEC. And this is what's going to happen. So the idea is for this investment to create new jobs, at the same time open up Pakistan and to the world and make it a more strategic place for the economy and for trade. So this is just one example. But then, as with everything, there are a lot of challenges still with respect to the Belt and Road Initiative. And some of them, for example, is a lack of participation by local workers and banks. It's usually China putting things in. From a report of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, there's a project that you can look at. It's a very, very good project. It's called Reconnecting Asia Project. One thing that they found out is one of the concerns would be, of course, ballooning deficits. So besides Pakistan, concerns about owning unmanageable debts to Beijing, which has been raised in Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and Laos. And then project delays, and also, of course, sovereignty concerns. Okay? But, having said that, the Silk Road is both a history of trade and a metaphor. So, I want to take it beyond the economic and the infrastructure and look at it from the cultural history and exchanges, and because nothing happens in a vacuum. If these things happen, and this is actually already happening, there is, of course, like this flourishing of intercultural exchanges among the parties and among the areas that are part of it. So we already know that there is a shared common heritage among the countries that are part of it. And the vision is really that it is a symbol of peace, friendship, and of course a win-win. So it's supposed to be a non-zero-sum game. And this would be a basis for future cooperation. So if you ask speakers from China to talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, they would tell you that this is an overall proposal for promoting social economic cooperation more than just building roads, railways, and port facilities. It's more than that. The core theme, they talk about peace, cooperation, development, and as I said, a win-win. And there are 5 priorities of cooperation: policy, coordination, facilities, connectivity, free trade, financial cooperation, and people-to-people bond. And the people-to-people bond is something that excites me more than the others, to be honest, as a social scientist. And there are 3 targets. One is on building a community of shared interest, destiny, and responsibility, which features economic integration and cultural inclusiveness. So you see those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cores that will represent the 5 priorities of the cooperation. It's interesting to note that when it comes to Spain, it was actually a part of the other Silk Route. if you remember your history, there was another Silk Route. Ranao de la China, if you remember? So there was a China galleon, for us, it's the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade. So it went through the Mexican ports, Manila in the Philippines, today's Taiwan and China, where it would load up Chinese spices and silks and other goods. So there was there is a researcher from Colegio de Mexico. He says that the initial encounter between Mexico and China occurred when the galleon first sailed into a Mexican port. And so, it launched an era of unprecedented global trade and cultural exchange. And then it's interesting because a lot, even for the Philippines, a lot of the things that we think are Spanish are not actually Spanish, they're Mexican. An example would be like how the Philippines also on November 1st, we pay respects to the dead. I don't know how many of you watched Coco. So Coco, yes, right? So in Coco, they during November 1st, you go to the cemetery, you play songs, and then you offer food, and then it is a belief that the departed would come, and if you only continue to remember, they will keep on living on the other side. This is thought to be very Mexican, but it's also the same. It's the same practice in the Philippines, exactly the same. And for the longest time, we thought that this was Spanish. But it's not, it's actually Mexican. So I'd like to argue that this is really a product of the Silk Route, the other Silk Route. The other thing as well is we have this Manito Manita during Christmas time. And everybody thought that this was also a Spanish thing, Manito Manita, but nobody could trace where it is, and my Spanish friends say, no, we don't have that. But then when I tell my Mexican friends, yes, we do. It's like this secret friend, we have it. You see, and I think it's because of these exchanges. But automatically, since we were under Spain for 300 years, then we think that this is coming from Spain and not from Mexico. But you see that what happens because of these exchanges. And this is the same thing that we can if we extrapolate the Belt and Road Initiative. So talking a bit more about the Manila-Acapulco trade, there's actually a book by Edgardo Angara and Carlos Madrid. So if you want to look at it, I think it should be in your library. So it's incredible because this is an exchange. It's not just the Philippines or the Asian countries giving to the route along the way, but also Mexico also giving to the Philippines. So that's the power of trade during this time. But with this, that was actually my introduction. Now I want to have this ambitious program of expanding this to a discussion about entrepreneurship, especially female entrepreneurship, and how the Belt and Road Initiative can help entrepreneurship for women entrepreneurs, especially those coming from the Philippines and Southeast Asia. This is Maria. She's a would-be entrepreneur, and she wants to run a business not only in the Philippines but expand it to the Belt and Road Initiative. So, according to this futurist, her name is Faith Popcorn. You can Google her. She has wonderful perspectives about the future. Her name is Faith Popcorn. She says that in the next years, we are experiencing an evolution. So Eve, the female revolution. So this is the era of the feminine being, which is actually good for the planet, and it's actually good for people. So there are big demographic shifts in the history of society, and there is a feminization of the culture. When you talk about data, because we talked about data a while ago, this is putting a soul into data, because there's a lot of information, a lot of data. But if you have data divas, you have intuition, you have good listening skills, empathy and compassion, there's a driving change in delivering value, which is not yet being expounded so much right now. It's a missing thing in the discussions of economic and trade, and that is why, this is the reason why I raised it. When it comes to the Philippines, initially the Philippines was not a part of the Belt and Road Initiative, but now we've been signing a lot of agreements. Our president is Rodrigo Duterte, has signed a lot of agreements to upgrade ties with jointly building the Belt and Road Initiative with China. But the question that I wanted to focus on when it comes to the Belt and Road Initiative and the ASEAN, especially entrepreneurship in the ASEAN, first is how does gender factor into the strategies, operations, and impact of women-led enterprises in the Philippines with export operations along the Belt and Road Initiative. Second, what are the modes of women's engagement in the governments of enterprises with markets along the Belt and Road Initiative? So just something about the women and economy. There's a positive correlation between gender equality and a country's level of competitiveness in GDP, according to the World Economic Forum. Women represents today most powerful consumer group, making up a market whose growth potential is greater than that of China and India combined. And it is the most important commercial opportunity in our lifetime. I didn't say that, it's the Boston Consulting Group. If you have women in the workforce, you have 21% more likely than other firms to report above average profitability. And companies with 3 or more women on their executive committees scored higher on organizational health on average than companies with no women at this level. What does this really mean? I'm gonna break it down. Basically, if you have more women on your boards, they will become, of course, role models for other women. There are more innovative results. There's a better level of effectiveness in solving difficult problems, and there is an increased corporate social responsibility. The next question is, how would this benefit to employees in teams and to the organization? You have greater satisfaction and commitment, an increased perception of fairness, better relationships with managers and colleagues, reduced costs, attracting top talent, increased productivity, profitability, and engagement, tapping new markets and building customer loyalty. Perhaps in most of the countries that are represented in this room, this is not anymore a problem, perhaps. But there are the majority of the countries still do not have this one. And that is why I'm emphasizing it. That if you have women on your boards and women in leadership positions, you basically have a better business. And this is the reason why the United Nations created the Women's Empowerment Principles. And these are 7 principles that basically justify that equality means business. That if you have gender responsiveness, that would yield positive things for your business. So, if you look at the history today, where we are today, women's representation in leadership has improved, but there is still a gender gap. Okay, in boards in the Asia Pacific, from 6% to 13%. That's not even like a part of a pie that you'll be happy with, or part of the cake that you would love to eat. You know, like that's nothing. And it is still lower than Western counterparts. In most of Western countries, 22% in the United States, Canada 27%, 39% in France. Still not half of it, see? So if the women hold half of the sky, nobody's really holding it right now, right? Okay, now I'm going to localize it and talk to you about the Philippines. So here's my Maria again. How about the Philippines or Filipinas? Interestingly, when it comes to the Philippines, we're actually doing very good when it comes to bridging the digital, the gender gap. If you look at when it comes to the Philippines compared to China, in senior management, we're faring very well. We have 33% in senior management and board members 15%. In the global gender gap, every single year we are in the top 10. I don't think we've ever failed in the top 10. But interestingly, the problems remain. For one thing, we are very low when it comes to, we haven't reached the target when it comes to addressing maternal mortality or the death of women during childbirth. We don't have that yet. The second thing is there's still violence against women. A lot of it. Thirdly, the Philippines maintains unfortunately as a hotbed for cyber pornography, and majority of them are women. So it's really ironic that you are in the global gender gap. We've had two female presidents already, Corazon Aquino and of course Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, who I worked with. She was my first boss. But the thing is, like, you know, with the Philippines, the irony is there. On one hand, we have female leaders who become like huge people, huge leaders not only on the national scale but also internationally. But on the other hand, the issues remain. And this is the reason why we have to find a way to find opportunities, especially for women in Asia. And one of the things would be the Belt and Road Initiative. One thing that I wanted to share to you, and I don't know if Spain has this, is that the funds of the Philippine funds, the Philippine government funds, we actually have a rule that 5% of the annual budget goes to gender and development, goes to women empowerment. It doesn't matter if you are a national agency or a local government unit. 5% of your funds has to go to a gender responsive plan or gender responsive program. And if you notice on the first column, it all starts with the gender issue. So when it comes to, and I think this is a good guide for a lot of us, especially for those who want to go into development work, that you can't start with the program per se, but the funds that you have. But basically, you have to identify the gender issue first, or the mandate of the office, and then you can spread with the cause of the gender issue, the result, the relevant agency, and finally what activity. Because for most people like now, like, oh, it's Women's Month, so what can we do? I know, we can have like a talk, a panel discussion about women, which is not bad. But we are not addressing first the God issue. Why would you do it in the first place? What is the gender issue that you want to address? Okay? And one of the main things that I was working with, especially with the Spanish embassy in the Philippines, the IC, the Spanish Agency for International Development Corporation, is this one. It's the competitiveness of women-owned businesses. And interestingly, it can expand to the Belt and Road Initiative because there are now a lot of discussions of including women, especially women in business. In fact, there's a China-Arab forum that calls for women to help build the Belt and Road. And then there's another forum that discusses opportunities and challenges. And finally, since I'm like 36 minutes and I know that I only have 40 minutes, I want to introduce you to women in entrepreneurs, powerful but very, very young women entrepreneurs who are now pushing towards this direction. The first of this is this girl. She is known as the Chocolate Princess of the Philippines. Her name is Danaray Polot. She has a very interesting story because on one hand, her parents are very, very simple folk. Her mother was a street sweeper and her father was a tricycle driver. But they created the business using tablea. These are this pure cacao. And now she has gone to Paris in like with the French exhibit of like the best chocolates in the world. She's been selling like everywhere, and now she's trying to expand also in the other regions, especially in the region of the Belt and Road. And so when it comes to, we had a project, I used to handle this project with the US Embassy, and it was a boot camp for women entrepreneurs, and she won the grand prize. And that was her opening. Now she just won an award in Tokyo as the young entrepreneur leader, best leader, something like this, but like a champion of entrepreneurship for young people. And she's doing very well. The other person is, of course, beside Jack Ma, and she is the founder of Rags to Riches. And it's an interesting case of entrepreneurship because she uses waste. Instead of like throwing it away, she uses it, she upcycles it, and she sells it like it was like haute couture, or like to very expensive fashion houses. And because of this success of like bridging the gap between young women producers and then like the fashion industry, and having them connect to each other through design and fashion and entrepreneurship and good business. She was invited to the World Economic Forum, and she had an exchange with Jack Ma. And when it comes to women, our organization tried to do Likhang Pilipina. Likhang Pilipina means created by Filipinas. And these, what we do is we identify in the local markets, we identify good products that we can upscale, and we provide them a space in this very posh mall in the Philippines, where most rich people go, and also expats go to shop for souvenirs and what have you. And now it's a growing business, a very sustainable business, and this is something that we want to expand as well. The last one was funded by the Canadian Development Agency, CIDA, and now it has become an ASEAN brand, the Great Women Project. Great, G-R-E-A-T, actually means gender responsive economic actions for the transformation of women. That's why it's called GREAT. So Great Women Project. So this started in the Philippines, but now because of the success of the project, it's now being replicated in different places in the ASEAN, including China. So there are talks now between ASEAN and then the Philippine Women's Economic Network, and hopefully I think they're trying to talk also to the All China Women's Federation, and trying to find synergies to work together when it comes to women entrepreneurship. So this is just a snapshot of the things that you can do when you look at links and routes and interconnections, when you look at convergence, when you look at how in your world you cannot really be successful if you stand alone. And I think every one of you is already connected online, but how much more if you connect with this level. And I hope that as you do that, you also think of doing it beyond yourselves, as what happened with majority of the women that I'm showing you. They started with bettering themselves, but in the process they also inspire others, and at the same time they actually create a very successful and sustainable business proposal that not only benefit them but benefit other women and create resilient communities. So in the spirit of International Women's Month, International Women's Day, we are all Wonder Women. Thank you very much.